Well, good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to the Sutton Trust Summit on Advancing Access and Admissions for Low and Middle Income Children to Top Universities. Before I say anything, I have been ordered, and I mean ordered, by the Royal Society to read this to you. If you hear a continuously sounding fire alarm, you should vacate the building calmly, but quickly, without collecting your personal belongings or using lifts. Please make yourself aware of emergency exits, and in an alarm, please assemble at the top of the Duke of York steps to the right of the building. That's just down there where some of you may have come past. Anyway, that's the requirement is over. Let me say, I'm really delighted that so many leading figures from different fields, from politics, academia, and so on, have come together to discuss this crucial issue, and a particularly warm welcome to our overseas visitors from the US, France, and Netherlands. Now, the Royal Society was set up in 1660 for something rather grandly described as the advancement of knowledge. Now it does a hell of a lot to spread knowledge of science and mathematics in schools. Now, as you can imagine, the members here are all brilliant, but when they designed this building, which is about 4 floors and enormous, they only put one men's loo and one women's loo in the building. And Vince has just found out about this. It's right down in the basement at the furthest point away, so I can't understand why they didn't put more loos here. Anyway, before I introduce Vince, I want to tell you why I'm so passionate about this topic, improving access to leading universities. Now, I know some of you know my story, so I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but I am the son of a Viennese emigre. My father came over in 1938, and I grew up in very modest circumstances in Wakefield, Yorkshire. When I was 11, we moved down south, and I went to a school called Reigate Grammar School, which actually was a private school that was 100% state-funded. Then when I was 17, we moved to Cheltenham, and I went to Cheltenham Grammar School, which was a state grammar school. I was lucky enough to go to some very good schools, which enabled me to get into Oxford and then to go on do an MBA at London Business School. Those opportunities led to a successful business career, culminating in me setting up the Sutton Company, a private equity firm. So I'm acutely aware that being able to access one of the world's leading universities and one of its top business schools propelled me from where I started to where I am today. I'm also aware there are too few opportunities today for children from low and middle income families to do the kind of thing I've done. We all heard John Major's remarks last week. We agree with them. We've looked at all this scientifically. If you look at top barristers, solicitors, judges, medics, the media, the city, over 50% of the top people in those areas are privately educated. Only 7% of people go to private schools. And some of those are up at 70, 80%. So this, I came back to Britain 16 years ago, and this actually prompted me to stop raping and pillaging in the private equity business and to find Jesus and set up the Sutton Trust, which I did in 1997. Since then, we've worked on improving social mobility through education in 2 ways. One, by funding a hell of a lot of research, 140 research studies, and a lot of programs, close to 200 programs, helping hundreds of thousands of kids. The first program that we funded was a summer school at Oxford for low and middle income kids that Oxford schools from they'd never heard from. And 64 kids went on that summer school, and 16 ended up going to Oxford, which was a real eye-opener for me that we could really make a difference. That has grown into a program where we now have summer schools at 9 of the top UK universities, and with this year there were 1,700 students, and we're looking to expand that for next year. It was also picked up by government. It was scaled up. And under the Aim Higher program, virtually every university in Britain has summer schools based on our model, and they, of course, a lot of those are still running, although Aim Higher has has now gone away. Now, the inspiration for the UK summer schools came from what I saw when I toured the US universities. The first place I went to was MIT, and I'm delighted that Stu Schmiel, Dean of Admissions for MIT, is here at the summit. Stu, where are you? I saw you earlier. Yep. And the director of outreach at MIT was a black student who told me he had grown up in Brooklyn and been recruited by MIT, but they said, listen, you've got a lot of potential, but you're not going to make it starting the course in September unless we give you a lot of help. So once we make you this offer, you're coming up to MIT and you're going to work right through the summer. And I thought that was kind of incredible that they took someone and gave them that amount of help. Next place I went to was Harvard, and I'm delighted that Marilyn McGrath, Director of Admissions for Harvard, is here. Marilyn very kindly invited me to sit on a Harvard Admissions Committee meeting. This is years ago. And I was incredibly impressed because they admitted an African-American woman with relatively low SATs. And so I was amazed at the extent of contextual admissions that took place, and this whole idea of a value-added concept, the idea that we're going to add a lot of value to this woman and we think she's got the potential to be the mayor of a city, a major city, and that kind of stuff. And that's partly why we've extended our summer schools to the US, and we are now entering our third year of those. And we're absolutely thrilled. We just announced earlier this week that Harvard are joining the program together with Yale and MIT. And this year we are doing it in partnership with Fulbright, who've been doing this kind of thing for years. And so we will have 175 places in 2014 on our summer schools. But these have already been successful. Our first summer school was based at Yale, and I'm Rebecca Westfall is here from Yale, and without Rebecca this wouldn't have got off the ground, because Yale hosted our first summer school. And the great thing is 21 out of the 64 students who were on our first summer school have started at American universities, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford. I mean, the list just goes on. And they are accessing $4.5 million of funding. And essentially they're coming out debt-free with 4 years of, I think, terrific education. Now, I'm going to move on now to British universities. We've been working with Oxford and Cambridge and many other leading universities, not just on summer schools, but all sorts of outreach programs over the last 15 years. We really enjoy working with them, and a lot of progress has been made. So I want to say a warm welcome to Sally Mapstone from Oxford and John Beard from Cambridge. For instance, when I set up the Sutton Trust in '97, I think the state school percentage at Oxford and Cambridge was around 48%. It is now 58%. I still think there's some ways to go, but it has moved in the right direction. Now, there's much more recognition today of the importance of fair access than there was 16 years ago. The whole thing's transformed. All UK universities see it as an important priority, and we're going to welcome Les Ebden, who is the Director of Fair Access, to the conference, who's going to talk about this. But as I said, there's still a long way to go. We need to do so much more. John Jerram will talk shortly about his work, which shows there is a real access issue on both sides of the Atlantic, as well as other places in the world. Now, what I've found, it's very easy to gain support for improving attainment for the poorest pupils. We were given $135 million by the government to set up something called the Education Endowment Foundation to help the poorest pupils in the most challenging schools. Everybody's for that. There is no problem with that. I guess partly because they'll rob you if you don't do anything when they grow up. So sort of self-interest, really. It's difficult to win backing for access to top universities. There's actually a lot of passive resistance. Contextual admissions are pilloried in the press here. It's called social engineering. Yet paying, $32,000 a year for a boarding school and $13,000 a year for a day school to give your kid a huge leg up is totally acceptable. I think we need a more level playing field. It's not just about basic fairness, but it's also about our national self-interest. I mean, this is uneconomic. We had BCG do a study on social mobility. We have got the lowest together with the United States. And they said if you had a decent level of social mobility, your GDP would be 4 percentage points greater. This is raw economics. We're not using our most talented people. So I think we're all looking forward to learning from best practice around the world, and that's why we put this conference together.